Welcome YouTubers to another episode in my Grammar Hero series. In today's video, I'm going to be working out some practice problems from the Arithmetic Reasoning subtest of the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. That is the ASVAB. Before I get started, I just want to say a few things. First, I want to mention that a lot of people find this to be the most difficult subtest on the ASVAB. The reason for that is simply because a lot of people haven't done this math in a very long time, if at all. As I like to say in all my videos, in order to be successful on the arithmetic reasoning subtest of the ASVAB, you have to be very comfortable doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, including with decimals and fractions. And not surprisingly, a lot of people haven't worked with fractions and long division since elementary school. That said, the more you practice with these problems, the better you'll get at doing them and the better you'll do on test day. So just stick with it. Eventually, these problems will become easier and easier as you sharpen your arithmetic skills. So all that said, let's go ahead and get started. All right, question 1 says a car has depreciated to 72% of its original cost. If the car is presently valued at $3,245, approximately what was its original cost? All right, so to do this one, we're going to have to write a simple equation to represent what this is saying. In this case, we're told that its present value is $3,245, and that represents 72% of its original cost, which I'm going to represent in this equation as 0.72x, where 0.72 refers to 72%, and x, and I can write that up here, represents the original cost. And let me just write original cost. I'm running out of space there. X represents the original cost of the car. All right, so to solve this one, it's going to take one step. That is, we want to get x by itself. So in order to do so, we're going to divide both sides by 0.72. This is going to cross out, leaving us with x equals 3,245 divided by 0.72. In math, it's customary to write the variable for which you're solving on the left. So that would look like this. X equals 3,245 divided by 0.72. And before we get too far into this practice test, let me just say this. In order to get the most out of this video, I strongly encourage you to try to work out these problems on your own on scratch paper. Pause the video as you do that, and then play the video to see if you and I come up with the same answer. As a reminder, you're not allowed to use a calculator on the ASVAB, so as you'll see, we're going to be doing all this work by hand. So let's keep going. With all that said, let's keep going with this on this problem. All right, so now, as you can see, we have this fraction, and that's, of course, not one of our answer choices. In light of that, we're going to have to regard this fraction as long division, which means we're going to rewrite it as such. 3,245 divided by, and my pen is acting up a little bit today already, divided by 0.72. Okay. All right. So the key to doing long division with decimals is this. If the decimal is inside this division bracket, you're fine. If, however, the decimal's outside the division bracket, you have to shift that decimal such that it makes the decimal a whole number, and then you have to shift whatever's inside the division bracket a corresponding number of times. In this example, we have 0.72 outside the division bracket, which we can't do. So we're going to have to shift this one 2 times to make 0.72 72. And then there's a decimal right here, technically, in this number. We're going to have to shift that one to a corresponding number of times. So in reality, we're working out this problem. Okay. 324,500 divided by 72. It's not as hard as you think, and as you'll see in just a minute, we're going to do some basic math to figure this one out. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 72 go into 3 without going over? It doesn't. How many times does 72 go into 32? It doesn't. How many times does 72 go into 324? Well, if you think about 72 as just 70, 70 times 4 would be 280, whereas 70 times 5 would be 350. So in light of that, I know that this is going to be 4. And if you take a look at our answer choices, this starts with 5, this starts with 5, and this is 2. I already know what the answer to this problem is without doing too much more work. On the ASVAB, you have to be confident enough in your math to say, yes, I got it. But that said, since this is the first practice test in this video, I'm going to go ahead and work this out fully so you can, in fact, see that that is the correct answer choice. So as I said, we're going to do 72 times 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 7 times 4 is 28. So 4 times 72 is 288. We subtract. And 4 minus 8 we can't do. We have to borrow. This becomes 1. This becomes 14. 14 minus 8 is going to be 6. Now this is 1 minus 8, so we can't do that. We have to borrow again. This becomes 2. This becomes 11. 8, 9, 10, 11. That's going to be 3. And 2 minus 2 is 0. Going to drop down this 5, and we're going to drop down these zeros as well. Okay? Now the question is, how many times does 72 go into 365? Again, as I just mentioned, it's a good idea to regard 72 as 70 in an effort to do this math mentally. So I'm going to do 70 times 5 being 350. Which will get me very close to 365. So I know the next value in this is going to be 5. And again, we already know the answer, so we can see that our work is mirroring what the answer is, which is a good thing. It means we're on the right track and we did all of our work correct. So again, we're going to do 72 times 5. 2 times 5 is 10, carry your 1. 7 times 5 is 35, 36. So 72 times 5 is 360. Let's subtract away. 365 minus 360 is just 5. Drop down this 0. Drop down this 0. Okay, so if you take a look, this is a little bit tricky here. Now we're saying how many times does 72 go into 5, 50, and then 500. You just have to realize that you have to add a 0 here since it doesn't go into 5 or 50. Okay, so now the question is, how many times does 72 go into 500? Well, according to our answer, it should be 7. But that said, let's go ahead and work that out and see what that gives us. 2 times 7 is 14. Carry the 1. 7 times 7 is 49. 50. We can see that 7 is going to be too big. It's going to give us 504. So again, we know this is 6. Thankfully, they said approximately what is the original cost. So in all likelihood, they rounded this answer, and I'll go ahead and show you that that's what they did. So this is, in other words, it's going to be 72 times 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 7 times 6 is 42. 43. Let's subtract this out. Okay. 2 minus 0 we can't do, so we have to borrow. This is going to become, and since this is a 0, we're going to have to borrow all the way over here. This is going to become 9, and this is going to become 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 3 is going to be 6. And 4 minus 4 is 0. Now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 72 go into 68? It doesn't. We add a 0. And in doing so, that prompts us to put a decimal there. And this is the last iteration of long division we're going to do. Now the question is, how many times does 72 go into 680? Well, if you think about 72 as 70, 70 times 10 would give you 700. So this is probably going to be 9. Let's go ahead and see if it is. 2 times 9 is 18, carry your 1. 7 times 9 is 63, 64. Okay, so this is going to be 9 here. And again, they have said approximately, so to be exact, the answer is 4,506.9. This 9, of course, allows you to kick up this 6 to $4,507, which is answer choice C. So again, as I pointed out, you could have stopped right here given the answer choices, but that said, it's always a good idea to be comfortable doing long division. Again, on the ASVAB, nothing's too hard. All the math is usually pretty simple, but again, you have to be confident in your ability to do these long division problems with decimals and bigger numbers. All right, question 2 says a garden is 30 by 40 feet. A fence is built around that garden at a cost of $1.75 per foot of fencing. What was the cost of the fencing? Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward problem, and it is something similar to what you'll see on the ASVAB. I'm just going to make a little diagram since it's helpful to always do so. We're told the garden is 30 feet by 40 feet, so we know it's going to be a rectangle, which means that this is going to be 30 feet, and this is also going to be 40 feet. And in this case, what we're trying to do is place a fence along the perimeter of this rectangle. And in order to find the perimeter of any shape, you have to add up all the sides. So in this case, to find the perimeter of this rectangle, you're going to do length plus width plus width. That is, you're adding up all the sides, which looks like this. Length is 40, so that's 40 plus 40. Width is 30, so that's 30 plus 30. Let's go ahead and work that out. All right, all zeros added up is 0. Now we have 4 plus 4, which is 8, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so this is 140. So we know the perimeter of this rectangular garden is 140 feet. In light of the fact that fencing cost $1.75 per foot, and we have 140 feet that we need to cover with fencing, now we're just going to solve by doing 1.75 times 140. And as you can see, we're doing multiplication, albeit with a decimal, times a whole number. That is 1.75 times 140. In order to do this problem, we have to shift this decimal such that 1.75 becomes 175. That is, we're going to shift it 2 times to the right. So in reality, I'm working out this problem, 175 times 140, albeit with 2 decimals that I removed that I'm going to shift back into the left at the end. So let's go ahead and work this out. Now we're doing multiplication with a 3-digit integer times a 3-digit integer. This is where most people make mistakes. Again, this is a lot of work, so be mindful as you do this arithmetic here. 5 times 0 is 0, 7 times 0 is 0, 1 times 0 is 0. All right, easy enough. Before we start with this 4, we have to add a 0 placeholder. 4 times 5 is 20, carry your 2. 7 times 4 is 28, 29, 30, carry your 3. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. Now before we start this 1, we have to add 2 placeholders. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 7 is 7, and 1 times 1 is 1. So let's add this all up. 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 plus 5 is 5. 7 plus 7 is 14. Carry your 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Add your 2 decimals back in, 1, 2, and we can see that this answer is $245. which is B. Okay, so let me get rid of this work as I do this so I can do this next problem. Again, you have to build confidence in your ability to do the arithmetic, which is the purpose of this practice test. All right, question 3 says, what is the simple interest on $600 at 8% for 1 month? Okay, so occasionally the ASVAB will have a question about simple interest. To deal with simple interest problems, you have to know the formula for solving for interest, and that's I equals PRT, where I stands for the amount of interest earned, P stands for the principal invested, R stands for the interest rate, and T stands for time, albeit in years. Okay, so now that we have the formula written down, let's go ahead and start plugging things in accordingly. Again, it's asking us to solve for I in this case. We know what our principal is. We invested $600, so we'll put $600 in place of P. So this is going to be our P. We're told what the interest rate was as well. That's 0.08. Again, you have to plug it in decimal form. If you plugged 8 in this formula, you would get it wrong. So again, this is going to be 0.08 in place of R. And time, as I mentioned, is always in terms of years. In this case, our time is going to be 1 month. In order to make that proportional to years, we're going to have to make that 1 over 12. Again, 1 month out of 12 months. Time's always in years. Okay? So let's go ahead and work this out. So we got 600 times 0.08 times 1 over 12. Let's go ahead and start by multiplying 600 times 0.08. And as you can see, we have a whole number multiplied by a decimal. As we did above, we're going to shift this decimal 2 times to the right in order to make 0.088. So that's going to be 1, 2. And in reality, we're now working out this problem, 600 times 8, albeit with 2 decimals to shift back into the left. 0 times 0 is 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 6 is going to be 48. And shift our 2 decimals back in, 1, 2. So we can see 600 times 0.08 is 48. Let's plug that into our formula. This becomes 48 times 1/12. And now we're doing multiplication, albeit with a whole number times a fraction. That's easy enough to deal with. Whenever you run into this scenario, to make the whole number a fraction, you can simply place it over 1, which will allow us to do 48 over 1 times 1 over 12. When you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. That is, you do 48 times 1, as well as 1 times 12. Again, we just multiplied straight across. And in case you need a refresher on fractions, there is a video on my channel devoted to that if you want to take a look at that. So this becomes 48 over 12, which we should all know is 4. Again, 48 divided by 12 is 4, which is going to be A. Number 4 says, Rachel's chemistry class has 4 unit exams and a final. She needs at least an average of 85, a letter grade of B, in order to keep her scholarship. If her unit exam scores are 75, 89, 79, and 92, what is the grade Rachel needs on her final exam in order to keep her scholarship? Okay, so this is a fairly common question you'll see on the ASVAB, and it's in regard to averages or mean, or finding the mean. And in case you forgot, the mean is the sum of everything divided by how many numbers there are of everything. And that's the short definition. But what that means is in the numerator, we're going to sum up all of her grades on the test, and we're going to divide it by how many grades she took. So that's the sum of the test divided by how many tests she took. And to solve this one, we're also going to have to account for her unknown grade on the 5th exam, which is the final. So that's going to look like this. 75 plus 89 plus 79 plus 92. And again, she took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exams because we want to figure out what her 5th exam score must be to make her average 85 or better. So we're going to represent that unknown exam score as X. And as I said, average is the sum of all the numbers divided by how many numbers there are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, including the unknown one, X. And her average must be 85 for her to keep her scholarship. So that's how you set up these problems. Again, you take the average, the formula to find the average, you add X for the 5th unknown score, and then you set it equal to 85. Now it's a matter of solving this one. The first thing I'm going to do is multiply both sides by 5, which is going to get rid of this 5 in the denominator. So this is going to become 75 plus 89 plus 79 plus 92 plus X equals, and let's work this out, 85 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25, carry your 2. 8 times 5 is 40, so this is 425. And again, we're solving this one for X, which represents her grade on her final exam. So to do that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to combine all these like terms. That is, I'm going to add 75, 89, 79, and 92, which is going to make subtracting it across the equal sign a lot easier. So let's go ahead and do that math. This is where most people would make a mistake on this problem. So let's make sure we write these down correctly. And then after that, we'll make sure we do the addition correctly. All right, let's add these up. 9 plus 9 is 18, plus 2 is 20, plus 5 is 25. All right. 8 plus 2 is 10. 7 plus 7 is 14, so 10 plus 14 is 24. 24 plus 9 is going to be, let's work that out. 4 plus 9 is 3, carry your 1, 33. So this is 335. In other words, if we replace 335 for all these values, it's 335 plus X equals 425. Now to solve this one, it's a matter of subtracting 335 from both sides, which will give you X by itself. This crosses out, leaving you with X equals 425 minus 335. 425 minus 335. 5 minus 5 is 0. 2 minus 3 is going to be, we can't do, so we have to borrow. This becomes 3. This becomes 12. 12 minus 3 is 9, and then 3 minus 3 is 0. So we can see that X represents the grade that she needs on the final to keep an average of 85 to keep her scholarship, and that grade on the final must be a 90, which is A. Okay, very common ASVAB question. All right, number 5 says a woman paid a tax of $88 on property assessed at $28,000. Her neighbor, assessed at the same rate, paid a tax of $110. What was the assessed value of her neighbor's house? So this one means we're comparing tax rates, and they are proportional to one another. In this case, we know a woman paid $88 on $28,000 house. And to find out how much her neighbor paid, I'm going to go ahead and set up a proportion here. Again, in this top, we have dollars. of the cost of taxes, and in this bottom we have the cost of the property, or the value of the property. So what I'm going to do here is put taxes, the cost of taxes in the numerator, which is going to be 110. And what we're trying to figure out is the cost of the neighbors, or the value of the neighbor's property. So I'm going to represent that as x. In this case, we're going to cross multiply and solve for x. That said, as you can see, we have 28,000 times 110, which is a lot of work. So what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to try to reduce this fraction. So let's go ahead and work on doing that. And again, this is 88 over 28,000. I know that this can be reduced by dividing top and bottom by a factor of 4. 88 divided by 4 is going to be 4 goes into 8 2 times, 4 goes into 8 2 times. And similarly, 28 divided by 4 is 7. So all we do is have to bring these 3 zeros over there. Okay, so I've reduced this a little bit already. Let's see if we can take this even further down. And at some point, you might not be able to and just have to bite the bullet and do the math. But let's see. If I divide 22 by 2 and 7,000 by 2, I know 22 divided by 2 is 11. And similarly, I know 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, but this will be 3,500. So I've reduced this all the way down to 11 over 3,500. So we'll go ahead and replace that in this proportion over here. And let me rewrite that real quick. 11 over 3,500 equals 110 over x. And as I mentioned, to solve this one, we're going to cross multiply. And that is, we're going to do 3,500 times 110 and 11 times x. 11 times x is 11x. And this becomes, as I said, 3,500 times 110. So let's go ahead and work this one out. It's not as bad as you think. And as you'll see, the math's going to work out pretty easily once we get to the point of solving this one. So again, have faith or confidence in your ability to do the arithmetic. As long as you do the arithmetic correctly, usually the questions on the ASVAB, as you've seen so far, kind of just work out. And that's how you know you're on the right track. So 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. And 3 times 0 is 0. Easy enough. Since we're starting this number, we're going to add a 1 placeholder before we begin. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. And 1 times 3 is 3. All right. Now we're starting this number, so we have to drop down 2 placeholders. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 3 is 3. So let's go ahead and not multiply. Let's add this up. And again, arithmetic reasoning usually takes a lot out of you. 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 5 plus 0 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. 3 plus nothing is 3. So this says 11x equals 385,000. Okay, so now we're going to divide both sides by 11. This is going to cross out, leaving you with x equals 385,000 divided by 11. Don't panic. That's not that hard to do. No decimals, so we don't have to shift anything. But again, this is a fraction, so we can regard it as long division. So that's going to be, my pen's acting up a little bit, 385,000 divided by 11. Again, take this in small bits. Don't get panicked by the big numbers, which, is the purpose of doing this on this test. Now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 11 go into 3? doesn't. How many times does 11 go into 38? 11 times 3 will give you 33, whereas 11 times 4 will give you 44, so we can't use that. So this is going to be 33. Subtract that out. 3 minus, and as you can see, we can cross out this answer right away. 8 minus 3 is 5. 3 minus 3 is 0. So drop down this 5 and then drop down these zeros as well. And just like that, now we can see what the answer is going to be. 11 goes into 55. 5 times, bring up these 3 corresponding zeros. 11 times 5,000 will give you 55,000. So we can see there's no remainder. Therefore, we know the answer is going to be $35,000, which is C. Okay, so that was that one. Again, you could have got intimidated by the big numbers, but again, try to simplify where possible, and then have faith that you did the math right and it's going to come out evenly. Okay, so that was that one. Again, for this one, I put the taxes in the numerator and then the value of the property in the denominator, and then I cross-multiplied using this proportion. Question 6 says, how many square tiles, each 12 inches on a side, will Ozzy need to cover a floor that is 11 feet wide and 18 feet long? So let's start by talking about what we have. Again, we have a floor that's rectangular, that more specifically is, and let me adjust my mouse real quick, that is 11 feet wide by 18 feet long. Okay, so it looks more or less like that. In addition, we know each square tile, and this is a zoomed in view of the tile, and that's not that good. Let me fix that real quick. Each square tile is 12 inches by 12 inches. I'm going to convert inches to feet since the area of the floor space is given in feet. There are 12 inches in a feet. Therefore, we know simply that this tile is 1 by 1 in terms of feet. In order to figure out how many tiles you need to cover this floor area, what you have to do is find the area of the floor, and you're going to divide that by the area covered by each tile. Okay, so again, to find out how many tiles you need, you first have to find the area of this entire floor space. Then you're going to divide that by how much area each little piece of tile takes up. And thankfully enough, this is pretty easy to do. The area of the floor is pretty easy to find. This is a rectangle, so we know its area is going to be length times width. And we can go ahead and work that out real quick. That's going to be 11 times 18. Let's work that off to the side. 18 times 11. 8 times 1 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. Add a 0 since we're starting that 1. 8 times 1 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. Let's add. 8 plus 0 is 8. 1 plus 8 is 9. And 1 plus nothing is 1. So we know the area of this floor space is 198 feet squared. And to find out how much area is covered by each tile, we're going to find the area of a square now. And that's going to be area equals side by side, or side squared, however you want to view that. One side's 1 foot, the other side's another foot, so that's going to be 1 by 1, which is the same as 1 foot squared. And as I mentioned, to solve this one, we're going to take the area of the floor, which is right here, and we're going to divide that by each of the by the area covered by each tile, which is right there. And then we'll have our answer. So let's do that over here. That's going to be 198 divided by 1. Anything divided by 1 is itself, so we know that this is going to be 198 tiles, which is D. All right, so in case it wasn't obvious, again, since this is feet, this also has to be feet. You could not have done this with inches here and feet here. And again, to start this problem, I knew 12 inches is the same as 1 foot. So I just rewrote the area of the tile as 1 by 1 instead of 12 by 12. You have to keep your measurements the same, otherwise your answer will look crazy. So just be mindful of the fact that I did that to start. I didn't write it out because I thought it was common knowledge that 12 inches is 1 foot, therefore the square is 1 by 1. All right, let's move on to number 7. Number 7 says a car travels 50 miles an hour and a plane travels 10 miles a minute. How far will the car travel when the plane travels 500 miles? Okay, so pretty challenging problem here. Whenever you start seeing miles and times and distances all jumbled up, you should realize that you're probably going to have to make use of the distance formula, which is distance equals rate times time, where distance, of course, stands for the distance, where D stands for distance, R stands for rate in miles per hour, and T stands for time in terms of hours. That's going to be very important. But to start this one, I'm going to try to separate these two things that are going on and then use one to solve the other. So I'm going to start with the plane. Okay, and let's see what we know about this plane. It says the plane travels 10 miles a minute. Well, that's not helpful in terms of using the distance formula. Again, 10 miles a minute. I want to know what that is in terms of miles an hour, because that's going to give me its rate. So in order to go from 10 miles a minute to miles per hour, all I have to do is take this 10 and multiply it by 60. Again, there are 60 minutes in an hour. So if I multiply minutes by 60, that's going to give me this in terms of hours. So that's going to be 60 times 10. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 6 is 0. Drop your 0 placeholder. 1 times 0 is 0. 6 times 1 is 6. Add, we can see this is going to be 600. So if the plane goes 10 miles a minute, in terms of hours, that's going to be 600 miles per hour. And I like seeing MPH, which makes it easy. This miles per hour is the rate of the plane. Okay. In addition, we know we want to figure out how far the car is going to travel when the plane goes 500 miles. So in other words, we have to figure out how long this plane traveled to go 500 miles. That's fairly easy to do. Again, we're going to make use of the distance formula real quickly. We know the rate of the plane is 600 miles, and we know the distance. Again, the distance the plane travels is 500 miles, so that's our D. So let's plug things in accordingly now that we know them. 500 miles, we're told the plane goes 500 miles. We don't know how long that takes, but we do know that it is traveling at a rate of 600 miles per hour. And we're trying to figure out how long that takes, so we're going to leave T as the variable for which we're solving. Now we're going to divide both sides by 600 to get T by itself. This crosses out, leaving you with T equals 500 over 600. Again, in math, it's customary to write the variable for which you're solving on the left. So this is going to be 500 over 600. Now we're going to cross out these corresponding zeros, and we can see T equals 5/6. What does this 5/6 mean? It means the plane took 5/6 of an hour to travel 500 miles. Using this piece, we can probably figure out how far the car travels. So let's go ahead and start working on that car. So what do we know about the car? We know the rate of speed at which the car is going is 50 miles per hour. And again, that was given right here. Car travels at 50 miles per hour. The question is, How far will the car travel when the plane travels 500 miles? Well, we know it took the plane 5/6 of an hour to go that distance. Now the question is, how far did the car travel in that time and given its rate of speed? So again, not surprisingly, we can use the distance formula to figure this one out. All right, so let's plug in what we have and then solve for what we don't have. Distance is what we're trying to figure out, so we'll leave that as D. Rate is 50, and time is 5/6. As you can see, we're doing multiplication with a whole number and a fraction. In order to do that, we have to make 50 a fraction so we can do the multiplication. In order to make a whole number a fraction, you simply place it over 1. So to make 50 a fraction, we write 50 over 1. Again, that's time 5/6. When you're doing multiplication with fractions, you multiply straight across. 50 times 5 is going to be 250. Again, that's divided by 6. So in other words, the distance is going to be 250 over 6 miles. That's not an answer choice, not surprisingly, so we're going to have to do the long division. Again, all fractions can be regarded as long division. So in other words, 250 over 6 can be regarded as 250 divided by 6. Let's go ahead and work this out, and then we'll have our answer. So 6 goes into 2, it doesn't. 6 goes into 25. 4 times without going over. 6 times 4 is 24. Subtract out. 25 minus 24 is 1. Drop down this 0. Right away, I know what the answer is. It's going to start with 4. So the only answer choice that starts with 4 is C. But that said, let's work this out. 6 goes into 10 one time without going over. 6 times 1 is 10. 10 minus 10, did I just say that? 6 times 1 is 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. 6 doesn't go into 4, so we're going to have to add a 0. In doing so, that's going to prompt us to bring a decimal right there. 6 goes into 40 6 times without going over. 6 times 6 is 36. Let's keep working this out. 40 minus 36 is 4. And as you can see, this is just going to keep repeating. So this is going to be 41.6 miles. Again, they rounded that, so no big deal there. All right, let's go ahead and get this little part out of the way. And then we'll be done after this problem. All right, question 8 says, one pipe can fill a swimming pool in 10 hours. And we can't see that, of course. One pipe can fill a swimming pool in 10 hours, while another pipe can empty the pool in 15 hours. How long will it take to fill the pool if both pipes were accidentally left open? So this, again, is a combined rate problem. All these problems pretty much have the same setup as to how to solve them. And let me show you what that is. If you watch my video, my practice test that I uploaded 2 days ago, you'll see that I gave you this setup. But in case you're a new viewer or subscriber, let's go ahead and think about what we're going to do here. If one pipe can fill the swimming pool in 10 hours, that means every hour it fills 1/10 of the swimming pool. Okay? Similarly, if one pipe can empty the pool in 15 hours, that means every 1 out of 1 hour, it empties 1/15 of the pool. And in this case, we want to figure out how long it's going to take for, if they're both left open, to fill one pool. Okay? So in this case, we're going to do 1 over 10 minus 1 over 15 equals 1. And instead of having 1 in the numerator, I'm going to go ahead and replace that with x, which is going to refer to the amount of time it takes to fill the swimming pool if both pipes are left open. So now this is just a matter of solving a problem involving fractions, which isn't that difficult to do. what you want to do is your next step is put both of these over a common denominator. And I don't know why I'm writing things here. 10 and 15 have a common denominator of 30. So we'll go ahead and try to put both these fractions over 30 so we can do the subtraction here. 10 goes in 10 times 3 will give you 30. So in order to make 10 30 in the denominator, we're going to multiply it by 3. And then we're going to have to do that into the numerator. So this is going to be 3x. And in order to make 15 30 in the denominator, we have to multiply it by 2. And we're going to have to do that in the numerator as well. So this is going to be 2x. And now we can simply just solve this. Again, when you subtract fractions, you simply do this. 3x minus 2x over 30 equals 1. 3x minus 2x is just x over 30 equals 1. Again, we want to get x by itself, where x refers to the time it takes to fill the swimming pool. So as our next step, we're going to multiply both sides by 30. This crosses out, leaving you with x equals 1 times 30, which is just 30. So in other words, if both these pipes are accidentally left open, one of which fills the pool in 10 hours, one of which empties the pool in 15 hours, it will take 30 hours to fill the swimming pool. Okay, so that was that one. Again, all these combined rate problems have the same setup. So if you got lost as I did this, take a look at yesterday's practice video, our practice test, and you'll see exactly what I did there. But that said, that's all I have for you in this video. I hope you found it helpful. Again, a lot of these questions were pretty challenging, but that said, the more you work with these, the easier they'll get. If you like the content I'm putting out, by all means, subscribe to my channel. In addition, you're more than welcome to leave some feedback in the comment section below. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose. Konnichiwa.